Hey guys, today we're gonna have a look at our first real vocal effect, or should I specify, group of effects, because in this video we're gonna be concerned with everything that has to do with the true vocal folds. Well, now you may ask, don't all vocal effects have at least something to do with the true folds? And you'd be right about that, so let me specify again. We are going to talk about every vocal effect that is produced by only the true folds. No false folds, no arytenoids, no additional tissues involved, okay? I could also say we are going to talk about every vocal effect that is related to fry. But then you might ask, what even is fry? And I'm afraid that in order to answer this question, we'd have to have a look at how the voice works in general first. So let's just start with that. So when I'm talking in a normal way, like right now, or I'm singing at a comfortable range, like my vocal folds are coming together sort of like this. They're vibrating against each other at a certain frequency at roughly 220 Hz, or the note A3 right now. If I want to go a bit higher in range, I have to allow my folds to stretch out to that. So if you, for example, take the note A4, so one octave higher, my vocal folds have to come together at 440 times per second. So I have three main ways to achieve that. I can either make a bit of an effort and try to drag the same vocal fold mass up there, like ah! You could call this coordination belting. But if I don't want to make the effort, I can also do ah, yeah, in which I'm allowing my folds to thin out, to only have the cover of them vibrating and, the bottom part staying passive, so that it's not the whole mass. You could call that thin vocal fold contact. Some people call it falsetto, others call it head voice, because when they go up in the range they feel a vibration in their face. I don't care what we're calling it, but the main thing is we have two coordinations, thick and thin. But we also have something in between. I spoke of three, right? So I can also do do something like this, where I'm thinning out a bit, but not that much that I'm flipping into thin vocal fold contact. So you could call that a mix. It's a thinned out, thicker vocal fold contact, okay? You could say that thick and thin vocal fold contact are the two most important mechanisms of the voice. They're also called M1 and M2 for that reason. We also have a third mechanism though, which is even less vocal fold contact, because only a small part of the length of the folds is coming together. So it's not even this, but you can imagine it like this, yeah? This makes it possible for us to go even higher in pitch. Like this, yeah? This is partial vibration, or M3, or whistle register, which is what most people call it. This just for reasons of completeness, because now we're finally heading to what I was initially talking about, namely fry. Because fry is, surprise, surprise, yet another mechanism, but not mechanism 4, but mechanism 0. It's 0 because it lies below our mechanism 1, a modal voice. So if you do a normal comfortable tone, like and then slide downwards, we will finally land in some kind of creaky noise, where it's hard to tell what pitch it is, because it's not really a vibration anymore. It's not that, but it's that. It's basically a rhythm, or small little pulses. Yeah? And this is what we need for all the fry-related vocal effects. As you can see, I've put on my jacket and switched on the light, because right now things are really getting cool and dark. We can differentiate three main variants of fry. The first one being sort of what I just did there, so just the pulses. And if you do that a bit more slowly, you'll get more of a rhythm. And if you do it faster and try to blend it with the sound of other registers, you'll get pitches like But this is not really our main focus here, so let's just hear the second variant. The second variant of fry is basically relaxing, just like sort of like the noise the girl in the movie The Grudge does, yeah? And this one's not even pauses anymore, but just slack phonation, yeah? The folds loosely drumming against each other and thereby creating what you could call irregular creaking. If there's irregular creaking, there's also regular creaking, right? And this one's actually pretty similar. It has the same kind of relaxation to it, but it starts not in fry, but in modal voice. So, it's a bit hard finding that balance, but you could probably hear that this was not just some random noise, but the subharmonics again. Remember, this time though I'm not clenching to get it, but just relaxing and letting only my true folds do the work. And this is actually our first vocal effect that's based on fry. I call it regular creaking. Let's hear a little demonstration. Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you could hear, creaking is also possible in head voice, although it might sound slightly different up there, like ooh, yeah. It works best on the closed vowels like oo and e, and is also not very likely to hit the first subharmonic, the octave, like in chest voice, but will jump to a second subharmonic, at least it did in this case right now. You can also do creaking in fry, and thereby reach really, really low frequencies. Whoa. What you just heard there could, for example, be used as a possible throat singing technique. And apart from that, creaking works really well in that kind of soft jazz crooning style that, for example, Jamie Cullum often employs. But what if you want to get a bit louder? Is that even possible in creaking? Yes, it is. It's kind of advanced, though. There is a technique I'd call projected creaking, or Rasp, and we're first gonna hear a little demonstration of it before I explain how to do it. So there was just a tiny bit of rasp in there, right? It's not as obvious as the normal regular creaking, and also not as easy to find, but it's a nice little effect if, for example, you're singing a grunge ballad where you want a bit of dirtiness in your sound, but not too much aggression, right? The best way for me to access it is to do something like yeah, to have this kind of creaky onset and then some kind of moaning sound afterwards, where you're really leaning into it and thus forcing the folds a bit together. Not really pushing, because that would lead to a false fold distortion, which sounds a bit more harsh, but you're just kind of provoking creaking to happen, which is kind of the opposite of what we're doing with the regular creaking, because with that one we're just relaxing, yeah? And this is one of the reasons why it's not super easy to find, so it will eventually just pop up someday and we'll think, oh, that's it, and then you might play around with it and try to get it a bit more reliable and put it in here and there. So it's just a nice little advanced creaking variation, okay? And now finally, the most infamous of all fry-based vocal effects, the fry scream. Ow! So how do we get from to ow? Well, the answer to that is a question. Do you remember the second variant of fry I was talking about? Irregular creaking, the grudge noise. Well, in case you forgot, here it is again. Let's just try that together. And if you have problems fully relaxing like me right now, just shake your shoulders a bit, wiggle with your head. Oh, did you hear that? And now do some easy sounds. Feels good. And now take a deep breath and try again. Try to find regularity in the irregularity. Do you get what I mean? We don't want some normal creaking to happen, because that would be like a normal major chord in a free jazz piece, you know? We want really noise. Once you've got that sound, we can go to the next step, which would be to take the sound and let its resonance shift into your head, like if it helps you, you can imagine an underlying pitch, even if you don't really do a pitch, but beware not to think that you want to push something up, but just let it float into the sky like a balloon in the wind. And once you have it, it should sort of sound like the buzzing of a guitar amplifier, yeah? This is the sound we will now shape our fry screen from. And the first thing we need for that is good vowel shapes, because as long as we don't have any real pitch, the vowels are actually what determines whether we hear a high-pitched or a low-pitched sound. So if we now apply, for example, a very bright and wide and open and kind of nasty ah sound to our irregular creaking, it would sound sort of like ah, this. It's not projected yet, but you already hear kind of that fry screen quality. Whereas when we do ooh, it will sound more like oh. This will eventually be our low scream, but it's not projected yet, so it doesn't really sound thick. We could also do oh, this kind of vowel shape, sort of like an American R, which makes it even darker. Oh. And there already was some kind of low scream tone to it, right? But how do we get that loud now? This is the second step and the last step of shaping our fry screen. Projecting. The danger of projecting is that you try to force, and then you'll hear some thing underneath, which is our false folds and some kind of constriction that doesn't really help with a fry screen. So what we need is the feeling of projecting through the nose, or you can imagine that you have like a pencil between your teeth, or this power bank. And you want to go above that power bank or pencil, or, you know, nose. Yeah, instead of downwards. This last step might actually take a while for you to figure out, but don't let yourself be discouraged if it doesn't work right away, because it might just be due to daily condition that sometimes even the irregular creaking thing doesn't really work, or that you're just too constricted or trying too hard. And then on some other days it just clicks and you're like, oh, this is my fry screen. And then it's about making it more reliable. Once you do have that fry screen coordination though, you can try to combine it with other coordinations. For example, layering it on top of a clean note might get you a really solid shouty quality, like "Eow!" Or if you try to imagine that you're pushing into your brake, "Oh!" you're gonna get a really, really crazy hardcore scream. Sort of like this. But these are all advanced techniques that are derived from the original fry scream. And I'm afraid that in order to go into detail with that, we would need another video. So this is it for today. This was regular creaking, irregular creaking, projected creaking, fry scream. Good night.